So you're set.
Okay, I'm going to make this screen. Got it. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. There might be still a few more that come and join in, but like I said, we won't even probably know that. We won't even see that. So welcome to Color and Expression, Painting Animals in Watercolor. I'm glad you're all here, and thanks to Zoom that we can all be here together. And a big thanks to Chief Joe's for organizing this. Just heard a big boom. So just FYI, we've got some construction going on right outside my window. So that might have been somebody outside dumping some logs or something in our driveway. But hopefully you didn't hear that. It just scared me a little bit. So anyway, welcome. We have people from all over, and I'm going to go, sorry, I'm going to go shut my door so you can hear my dog barking. Be right back. Okay, sorry about that. So we never know what's going to happen in a workshop, huh? But anyway, thank you to Chief Joe's for making this all possible for all of us. I was going to say we have people from all over the place. We have California, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, Pennsylvania, Alabama, Hawaii, California, Massachusetts, Texas, Illinois, and Trinidad. So isn't that wonderful? So whatever time it is where you are, you know, I'm glad we're all together. So I'm Alicia Farris. You probably know that. I'm from Missouri, heart of the Midwest, and I live, you know, close to rivers and streams and lakes, and I have a lot of beautiful subject matter to paint. You probably all do too, but I love to paint animals and people, and I love being able to paint more emotion, not just what I see, but you know, with watercolor, you can really paint with emotion because watercolor does so much on its own. You know, the color flows on its own and it granulates on its own, and the white of the paper is your light. And it's just a wonderful medium. I've always loved it. I think I fell in love with it first when my mom used to paint when I was a kid. She took a watercolor class, and I remember these little bitty landscapes that she did, and they were just beautiful and brilliant. And I just remember the light, and just having the white of the paper as your light is just beautiful, and the luminosity that it affords the artist. I love that. So when I paint my subject, no matter what I paint, I try not to paint it just as I see it. I really try to paint how I feel about how I see it. And hopefully that comes through in my work, and maybe I can inspire you to kind of think about that when you're painting. So anyway, I want to go over a few things this morning, like my equipment first. First of all, I'll show you, you know, the type of brushes that I use. I like to, when I paint organic things, I like a round brush. So I use a few different brands. I love the Silver Black Velvet brand. It's a nice shape. It's got a nice point on it, and it's got a nice shape here that holds a lot of paint and a lot of water. So I love that. I have several different sizes of the Silver Black Velvet brush. And I also use, now these are a mixture of synthetic and natural hair. And what the synthetic does is it helps it maintain its shape. These really, really last. If you take care of them and just rinse them out well after you use them, they really, really last well. And what the natural hair does is it allows the brush to absorb a lot. So if you're painting along and you want to lift, you can wet the brush, dry it off, and just put it back into your area, and it'll absorb a lot of paint and a lot of color. So that's what the natural hair does. I do use natural hair brushes. This is I'm trying to put it in the light in the background so you can see. This is a Rhapsody Kolinsky Sable. I have several of these as well, and it's a beautiful, wonderful brush. Doesn't have quite the point, but when it's wet, it really does come to a nice point. And actually, it's better in a lot of situations because sometimes you don't want that point on the end of the brush to give you that shape. You want a nice round shape. So these are really nice for organic shapes, such as for faces and figures and animals. And again, I have, several sizes of that brand. And then this is an Escoda brand, which is a beautiful brand as well. This happens to be natural hair. So I really like this as well. Also, I was going to say different brands are different in sizes. For instance, let me hold up 2 number 10 brushes. This is a Escoda number 10, and this is a Rhapsody Sable number 10. So, every brand is different in sizes. So if you say, oh gosh, I need a number 10 brush, well, it might be different sizes depending on what brand you get. So you probably have a lot of brushes that you like too, and we all gravitate to the ones that we like, and those are the ones that I like. And then pencils, I like a nice soft pencil. I like from the B's are the soft pencils and the H's are the hard pencils. So I like the B, and I like, like from a 4 to a 8 or 9. The higher the number, the softer the pencil. And I even have a favorite eraser. It's called Moo, and it's a nice white eraser. And for whatever reason, it just works really well, and I love it. You wouldn't think that erasers would make that much difference, but sometimes even through a couple of coats of paint, it sometimes will erase a pencil line. I don't really worry about my pencil lines typically, but if there's something I want to change and I've already put a layer of paint over, sometimes this Moo will even, erase through that paint. Somehow, I don't know how it does it. So, and then I have my palette. It happens to be I think it's a Robert E. Wood is my favorite palette. And I'll show you in a minute here, but it just has nice separated wells all around the outside. And then the middle is divided so that I can keep my warm and my cool paint separated. I have several different palettes, but I always come back to this one. It's really old and it's just even breaking on the edges, but I love it. So I don't want to stop using it. Let's see what else. Okay. So the paper, let me switch my camera view to my easel there. Okay, there's my dirty easel. So the paper that we're using is hot press. And you may or may not be used to using hot press. But so of course there's cold press and there's hot press. So this is hot press. And the difference is, oddly enough, it's pressed hot. Go figure, right? And so that makes it smoother because it's pressed hot. Whereas cold press is pressed cold, and it still has a lot of that texture in it, and it absorbs differently. So hot press, because it's smoother, the paint will not cling to it like it clings to cold press quite as much. But also I paint on it at an angle. I have this at about a 70-degree angle here on my easel. It's kind of hard to see that because I've got my camera straight onto my easel. But I paint on it upright so that the paint moves. I want the paint to move down the page. I want gravity to take hold and move that paint and move one color into another color. I love that about hot press. If you paint on hot press more flat, or even at a slight angle, you will get tremendous blooms because it just doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't know where to go. And it kind of stays on the surface in a whole different way than it does on cold press. Does that make sense? So if you haven't used hot press, I'm excited because I think you'll find it very different from cold press. And you know, it'll be a nice change, and you might just notice things that you haven't noticed with cold press. And do not be afraid. It's just because it's hot press. I also want to say that I always tell my students in my workshops, you know, this is a workshop, and whatever happens is happening for us to experience and to learn. And even things that I do, you know, my demos aren't always perfect. You know, sometimes I'll do a demo and think, wow, that didn't work out very well. But it's okay, because we are all in this experimental mode. We are all just waiting to see what happens. And whatever happens, happens. Don't expect grand things today or tomorrow or Thursday, because we are here to learn. And we're here to experience, and we're here to experiment in maybe ways that we haven't experimented before. And, you know, we were just saying, as artists, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and try to back off from that and just allow yourself to learn and to experience. And if something happens that you like, then yay. And if something happens that you don't like, just learn from it and think, well, maybe I'll do it differently next time. Maybe this happened because of this. Maybe it happened because of that. So we're just experimenting and seeing what happens and figuring out why what happens happens. You know what I mean? So don't be hard on yourself. Okay. Oh, and I didn't address, I love questions, and I love comments, and I love discussion. With 25 of us, it might get a little bit hard to answer each question as it comes. So what I'll probably do, feel free to type into the chat your question or comment, and every now and then I'll just stop and kind of go through those. How does that sound? Now, if there's something that I've just done that you didn't see, or that you didn't hear, or that you want me to repeat or something like that, do feel free to unmute yourself and just shout it out. That's fine with me. I just think if we all did that, it would be kind of messy. So, you know, I'll try to remember every now and then to stop and kind of address some questions. And that way we'll kind of keep it flowing. Does that sound good? All right. So with that said, there are two little chats, and oh, okay, Carly, I need help getting my picture on. You want to unmute, Carly, and explain which picture? I need help getting
I don't know what you want to do at this point.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Never call me.
Oh, okay. Do you want to call Terry? You have his number? Okay.
Yes, I have his number.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then Rebecca says, I haven't tried hot press really, so it will be fun to learn and try. Wonderful. Okay, good. All right. So the plan is for today, I'm going to spend about an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, going over some basic techniques and basic ideas that we will be using as we go forward in our painting our animals. And it being a workshop that is technically, officially beginner to intermediate and on up, I have agreed to kind of go over basic concepts, but I would do that anyway, because some of these, it's just good reminder, and it's good because it applies so much to what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to go over some kind of basic things and maybe not so basic things, maybe things that you've heard and maybe things that you haven't heard. I'll do that for about the first hour or so, give or take. And then we'll start on our first subject today, which will be the cow. And then we will continue on the cow tomorrow, and we'll finish the cow. And then we will probably, I suspect we'll start on the dog tomorrow. And then Wednesday we have off. Want to look at my face while I'm talking? Okay, here I am. So Wednesday we'll have off, and and then Thursday we'll reconvene and finish up the dog. Now Wednesday, I want to give, and I did this last time, I gave about an hour and a half on Wednesday as a little extra time to zoom in on my own Zoom. If you have any questions, if you want to just have some more painting time with others, if you want to discuss anything, if you want me to repeat anything that I've done the first 2 days, that will be that time on Wednesday. I'm going to do, and I'll tell you this again on Tuesday, and I'll send out my own Zoom link for my little extra thing on Wednesday, on Tuesday night. But it will be Eastern time, 1:30 to 3. I like to go see my mom in the morning, so I'm going to do that. And so 1:30 to 3 Eastern time, Wednesday, we'll have a little extra. And you don't have to zoom in. Last time I did this, I don't know, about out of 25 people, I think nine of them zoomed in on Wednesday, just for extra time. Some people had questions. Some people just were quiet and just painted along. And we just kind of did a little extra discussion, and it was just nice to give that extra time. And then back to the original Zoom link for Thursday's class. Does that make sense? And I'll remind you of that again tomorrow. So, okay. So I'm going to go back to my painting view here. And I'm going to start with, if you've ever taken a workshop, you have probably heard a lot about value. So, and if you have, great. And if you're going to hear it again. And if not, good, because you're going to hear it for the first time this time. So value is very important because every color has a full value scale. And I have my camera set up so that hopefully you can see a little bit of my palette. You won't be able to see the whole thing, but you can see my palette has, this is what I was saying, it has a little divider in the middle. And I like to divide my cool colors and my warm colors by this divider so that they won't mix with each other. I love that about this palette. So we know that every color has a value scale. So if I start with this ultramarine blue in a very light value, and by light value, of course, I mean, I'm going to add a lot of water to it. So we know that the lightest value is the white of the paper. We know that. That's the lightest light. Then the next lightest light, the light midtone, is a very watery version of that color. Okay. Then as we add more pigment, we'll have more color, less water, less of the paper showing through. Therefore, it's a little bit darker value, right?
Hey, Alicia, your photo is blurry right now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. How's that? Is that better? I can't really tell.
That's better.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think it was wanting to autofocus on something else. All right. So the more I paint, the more pigment that I add, the more value, the darker the value, right? And I usually do this in one line, but I'll have to go to the next line and paint the darkest value. And really we can get darker and darker as we add more and more pigment. I'll add one more because this is almost all pigment is the darkest value you can get. So every color has a value scale from lightest light to darkest dark. Now, some colors, it works a little bit better because, yellow only gets so dark, right? But still technically, if you went from a watery mix of yellow to a pure pigment yellow, you could get a nice range of value. Okay, so we know that. So with that, we're going to go to our next demonstration here. To color temperature. So color temperature, we have cool color and warm color. And I like to remember or remind students to remember this way is cool, think water is cool, and warm, think of fire as warm. So the color of fire is yellow, red, and orange, and the color of water is blue, green, and violet, right? So those are your warms and your cools. So because of the magic of watercolor and the magic of being able to layer luminous layers one over another, we can say that if we layer cool over cool, let me add a little more pigment because it's hard to see. Cool over cool, we're going to get more cool. I know you're getting a little reflection there, but can you see that? You get, it just gets a cooler, it gets darker and cooler, right? If we were to layer that same cool over the warm, we are mixing two different color temperatures. So instead of getting cooler or warmer, we're getting a neutral because we're mixing two. We're mixing the warm and the cool together. Now, technically, we're not mixing them together. We're layering them. So we really can see the layer of warm and we can see the layer of cool. And together they influence each other, one layer, one transparent layer over another. See that? So these colors, I think this is a cobalt blue. So this is an ultramarine blue that I laid over the cobalt. And it's an ultramarine blue that I laid over this color, which is just raw sienna. Let's mix a wet raw sienna with a wet ultramarine blue. And let me show you what color. That you come up with, okay? Look at the difference between this color and this color. What color is that? Who knows, but it's two transparent layers. So each color and each temperature is speaking for itself, right? Whereas this is just kind of a mud mixed. Well, I mean, it's a nice neutral. I won't call it mud, but it's mud, technically. It's neutral when we do it on purpose, and it's mud when we don't do it on purpose. But it's just a whole different color than this, okay? So remember that. And so the same thing happens, of course. Actually, let me layer over the cool. Let me layer, this is burnt sienna. Look at that color. Nice neutral, right? Whereas if I layered burnt sienna over raw sienna, you just get a brighter warm because each color is speaking for itself. Different than if you mixed burnt sienna and raw sienna together into a mix. Okay, it's just totally a different animal. It just gives it a little bit more magic. Okay, so layering makes a big difference. Layering to mix your color is far different than mixing color on the palette and then putting it on the paper like an oil painter would, you know? Okay. So along those lines, let's look at the color wheel. This is my old color wheel that I love. It's falling apart. But we look at the color wheel, and if we, so we know too that, so we have one side of the color wheel that's warm color, one side of the color that's cool color. If we mix opposites, like a blue and an orange, we're going to get a neutral. We're always going to get a neutral. If we mix opposites, violet and yellow, if we mix opposites, red and green, we're always going to get the neutral. Technically, if pigments were pure as pure, you would literally get the same neutral if you mixed all three of those combinations. Right? Think about it. It's amazing. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that, I think. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about value, yes, but how you can interpret a value just by using a color. And let me show you what I mean here. So if I paint, I've got two circles drawn on this paper. I don't know if you can even see that, but if I paint one of these circles and I use value to make it into a sphere, a ball, instead of just a circle, I know that, you know, maybe I would have left the white of the paper here, but I know that if the light is coming from this direction, this part of the ball would be in shadow. Therefore, I would paint a darker value over here, right? And it would be casting a shadow. So I can just do that with one color and explain light, you know, middle tone, and dark. Okay. Now, let's explain value purely with color. So I'm going to paint this circle on the right side with color, with different color, all the same value. Might go in and out of color, but I'm explaining the lighter value with my warm color. And I'm explaining the darker value with cool. Look at that. It's all the same value, but color alone explains where the light is and where the dark is. Can you see that? It's really light, but can you see that? Isn't that fun? So remember, it's not only about the strength of the paint. Sometimes it's about really what color it is. And you can explain a lot just by switching color and just by going from color to color. And it will read as light and dark value, but I have not changed from that light value. It's all the same value, but I've changed the color. That fun? Make sense? Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay. All right. That leads us to my next little demo. Of layering to build up value. Keep my palette nice and clean here. Okay. This color, oh, I love this color. This is one of my favorite new colors. Royal Amethyst by American Journey. It's comparable to Dioxin Purple or Dioxin Violet, I guess. It's really beautiful. I'll use this color. Okay. If I build up if I paint all in one value, all the way down my shape. And you see how when I have, because I've got the paper at a tilt like this, at a slant, I'm painting from the top to the bottom, and gravity is bringing the paint down, and I'm just kind of grabbing the paint and working it down the page. It gives you a nice, it gives you that nice wash, doesn't it? I don't want to go up into this now because this is nice and even. I mean, that's not really my goal. It's a value exercise, not a wash exercise. But anyway, that's what we're doing, is letting the gravity bring the paint down, and it makes it brings the paint down nice and evenly. Okay, so that's my first layer. I'm going to stop and dry this real fast so that when I add my second layer, it will stay very separate. It is hot press, but since I'm working kind of quickly, it doesn't have a whole lot of time to dry. So I was muting myself last time when I was drying, but I think the camera might mute the sound. If it doesn't, let me know. Okay, let me just dry it real fast. Could you hear that?
It muted.
I'm sorry?
It muted.
Oh, it did. Okay, thank you. Good. All right. Second layer. I'm going to start down a little bit so I can leave some of that first value. Build up another layer so that now I have my light mid value. Light and light mid value. By the way, these are nice little exercises, like warm-up exercises to start off the day. If you don't want to just jump right into your painting. Nice little exercises just to start. Okay, so now I haven't gone any darker with my value, this second layer. It's the same value as this layer, but just by virtue of the fact that I've layered those two, this has become darker, right? Make sense? Okay, let me dry that real fast. Okay, layer number 3. I'm going to start a little bit down here. Same value, but now I've got 3 layers of the same value. So I'm building up my strength just in these light, transparent layers. So now I've got light, middle dark. I'll dry it real fast. And I'll do one more, trying to keep the same value. To where we get not really a dark, but it's a dark mid value. But you get the right idea. Okay, so again, I'm not going any darker value. I'm going the same value each and every time. But look how dark we've gotten just from 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. Right? Okay. Now, let me show you. This time, remember when I painted the ball in different colors, but all the same value? Okay. I'm going to choose 2 warm colors. This happens to be raw sienna and Quin Rose. Those are my warm colors. My cool colors, I'm going to make cobalt blue, and royal amethyst. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm just doing 2 warms and 2 cools. All right. I'm going to start the same idea, all the same value, all the same value. I'm painting across, letting the gravity move the paint. I'm not going back in and scrubbing the color together. I'm just letting it mix on its own. Let's go back into warm, just randomly one color to another. I'm not doing stripes all the way across. Oop, I haven't used the purple yet. Royal amethyst. I'm not doing stripes. I'm keeping my shapes very random. I'm traveling down the page, letting this bead of paint really do all the work. I'm just inviting the color to mix. I'm just saying, come on down. There you go. Oops. Trying to stay the same value. There we go. Pink meet the blue, blue meet the pink. Bringing my color down, all the same value, but I'm just changing colors as I go. All right. I'm not even really being mindful of how, what 2 colors are going to mix. Technically, violet and yellow in the yellow family would get muddy. But since they're not mixing that much, they're just kind of blending. It's okay. And you get this beautiful luminous layer of all these colors kind of just shimmering together. There, layer number one. Can you see that? Sort of, yeah. Okay, let me dry this. Now, just refreshing my colors a little bit on my palette. Now, I'm going to do the same thing in another layer, right? I'm not really paying attention to what color is there already. I'm just doing the same thing. I'm not trying to break the color in the same places. I'm just being mindful of what's happening and the effect that it's giving me, how one color influences another color when they layer. And guess what? I'm getting a darker value overall the same way, right? The difference is each layer, I'm just floating one color into another, into another, into another. And you'll see where I layer a warm on top of a warm, you get a warm, beautiful warm glow. Where I layer a cool on top of a warm, you'll get a neutral. And where you layer a cool over a cool, you get a brighter cool. Okay, so look at that. Light value, middle light value, right? Can you see that? All right. I'll dry that real fast. Okay, there was a question as to what brand of raw sienna I use. Some colors, it really makes a difference what brand you use, and some colors it really doesn't make as much of a difference what brand you use. Some colors I'm kind of picky about brands, and some colors I'm not. Raw sienna, I'm picky about my brand, and I like several of the brands, but this one happens to be Winsor Newton. I find it's a nice clean color in the raw sienna. So I really like the Winsor Newton. I do have several brands of raw sienna, but this one happens to be Winsor Newton, and I like it a lot. There's another question. Oh, It's a very good demonstration of value. Thank you. Good. And would it become a muddy mess if you layered it from the bottom to the top? Well, yes, because the color would mix wet into wet. So you would get your layers, you would get your values building up, but I think it would get muddy because because I'm working from top to bottom, it's having an opportunity to not mix to become muddy. It's just mixing to mingle as it comes down the page. So yes, I think it helps to work from top to bottom doing this. All right, next time okay. So maybe I'll pay more attention. Okay, what do I have here? I have a neat, more of a neutral here. I have a nice glow of a warm here, this, that, so maybe I'll pay a little more attention next time to what I'm layering over what. There's a little bit of a warm here. I'll start with warm. This is, it just creates this luminous quality because we're not muddying up our colors. We're not scrubbing them together. We're just letting them mix on their own. They're mingling is what they're doing. And you get wonderful surprises, right? That's what's so nice about watercolor too, is it's just, it's not as predictable. And sometimes it just does something on its own. That's where the magic comes in. Okay. So there we have, oops, our third layer. Is that it's a little glary, but hopefully you can see light, middle dark. And we'll dry that and do one more layer just so you can see. I think the magic, again, the magic of watercolor is just letting go of some of the control. As human beings, we want things to be orderly and controlled, and watercolor, you just have to let it go sometimes because there's so much that it does on its own that's just beautiful. And sometimes if you're in too much of a hurry and you think you know where it's going and you want to just rush it along, sometimes you can interrupt what might have happened on its own, and just something that might have been just really mystical. Well, that's exaggerating a little bit, but magical. The magic of watercolor. let it do what it does on its own. Every time two colors mingle too, it's going to be different. That's what's so fun. You can't predict the shapes that are going to happen and the color mixtures. You just can't predict it. Okay, can you see that? Again, let me see if I can. Is that any clearer? Not really. Anyway, do you get the idea? That you can build up layers with one color. You can build up layer with 4 colors, but the secret is each layer, keep it the same value and just build up layer upon layer upon layer. And that's where you get that luminous quality, that, that look of one transparent layer over another transparent layer, as if it were a piece of colored plastic over another piece of colored plastic. You're seeing each color, and each color is speaking for itself, but they're influencing each other just by being layered one over another. Make sense? Okay, any questions there? Okay, Carly said, can you explain as you go how this works with animal portraits? So like, where are we going with this? So good question. So you'll see that when we paint our layers in the animal portrait, this is how we'll do it. We're not going to paint all one color, one layer, all one color, another layer. Oh, the ear is tan, so we'll paint it all tan. Nope. We are going to use color this way. We're using, we're very much going to influence with warms and cools. So we're going to think of each layer as a rainbow of color. And we're going to see how it just comes together at the end. And darks and lights explain a lot more than color does, if that makes sense. In other words, value is the most important thing, but color gets all the credit. And we are going to see that firsthand. Does that make sense? It'll make better sense when we're working. Okay, how do you feel about using fresh paint versus reconstituted paint? Okay, that's a good question too. In all honesty, I don't sit down and put out fresh paint every time I paint, but I don't let it get all crusty and really old. I do reconstitute my paint, and some of it reconstitutes better than others. Some of the brands are made with honey and they stay really nice and wet for a long time and don't really dry out. And some of them do dry out pretty badly. So I like fresh paint. I paint every day, so it doesn't really get too old. But I would suggest, you know, if you're going to leave your paints for very many days, I would put at least fresh paint on top of the old paint and reconstitute it that way. This layering concept only applies to transparent watercolor, correct? Well, yes, it works much better with transparent watercolor. You can make an opaque watercolor transparent by adding more water. So you can make it work, but it does work better with color that's transparent, that that doesn't have white in it. You know, so I think what makes the opaque paints opaque is that they have white. They have titanium white in them, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what makes them opaque. So having that opacity and having that white in there does cloud up the transparency and this layering effect. So yes, it does work better with transparent colors. I use, let's see, what are some of the, you know, cobalt is not that transparent. It's not completely transparent, but it's pretty transparent. I use cobalt blue, and so I will use cobalt turquoise, which is not completely transparent, but you know, I guess they're semi-transparent, so it works. They work pretty well. All right. Okay, let's see. Okay. I'm going to talk for a little bit about edges, edge quality. By edge quality, I mean, you know, sometimes a shape will have a hard edge. So if I've painted a color and I come to an edge like this that's very hard, and this value is next to this value, there's a huge break in value change from darkest dark to lightest light. That's a hard edge. It's a very hard edge. So we know that we can take water and soften an edge in order to make that that transition a little bit softer. So now you have a darker value, a lighter value, and the whitest white. So there's not as big a jump from this value to this value as there was from this value to this value. Make sense? Okay, let me show you a different way to look at it. And this will apply with our animals as well. So here I am painting along with this dark value. This happens to be burnt sienna. And I want to soften this shape to this shape, this value to this value. Well, another way to do that would be to take a lighter color value now there's a smaller step from this value to this value than there was from this value to this value. And all I've done is transformed the color. Let me go to another color. Smaller step, this value to this value. See how that works? So we're doing value by color and value by pure value. Does that make sense? You can soften an edge by with color as well as you can soften an edge with water. And that will make more sense when we're painting too. I'll try to point that out when it happens. Any questions about that? Okay. Let me choose between various shades of blue, for example, in cools, cobalt versus ultramarine. Okay. Well, there are, you know, there are, blues are cool and reds are warm, but there are warm blues and cool reds. I don't really worry about that as much, especially with this technique. I just think cools and warms, but you know, let's say you don't want as big a jump from the blue to the red. You might go to an ultramarine, which is a warmer blue to the red, rather than a cobalt blue. It's just a cooler blue to the red. But that's splitting hairs. I don't think we need to worry about that. Just think cools and warms. But know that they're, you know, sometimes you have a need for a warmer blue or a cooler warm or a cooler red, or, you know. But for our purposes here, we're not going to worry about that. I hardly really ever worry about that. Too many other things to worry about. All right, the last demonstration that I was going to do was is negative painting. So you might have heard of this term before, negative painting. It sounds kind of negative, doesn't it? But what I mean by negative painting is painting around a shape, is painting, and instead of painting a shape, painting the negative space. So let me show you here what I mean. I'm going to use my flat brush for this. Okay. Let's see. Peacock blue. I love this color. I could paint a rectangle. And I'm painting the rectangle. I'm painting a positive shape. Okay. If I were painting a negative shape, rectangle, I would paint everything but the rectangle. I would paint all around it. See? So in this case, my object, my subject, I should say, is dark and my background is light. In this case, my subject is light and my background is dark. Let me dry this real fast and show you one more thing. I'm sorry that that's so blurry. Gosh. I'll try to figure that out. So because we know that everything is relative, right? So that right now this is light and this is dark. But if we darken behind or around another shape back here, suddenly we have another value. And therefore, another shape comes out behind that shape. Can you see that? So suddenly now, this doesn't seem so dark, does it? Now this is the dark, this is the middle value, there's a shape, and this is the light. And you can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on until you're so dark that you can't get any darker. Just forming shapes and shapes and shapes and shapes and shapes. And what you do is you always paint around every shape. You paint around the original shape and you paint around your new shape. Then the next time you paint around your original shape, your new shape, and your new shape. So each and every time you get darker and darker in your background and you're forming more and more layers and more shapes. So that's negative painting. Okay. Now, how does that apply to animals? Well, let me show you. We could, and we're going to find this, especially in the dog on Tuesday, tomorrow and Thursday, when we paint the dog, we're going to paint a lot of these negative shapes. So let's pretend like I'm painting. You know, so here is, let's say this is a horse's mane blowing in the wind, positively painting. Okay, there's the horse. So let's negatively paint a horse's mane blowing in the wind. And there we go. Looks like an angel wing, doesn't it? See that? I didn't paint that, but it appeared because I painted all around it. Make sense? Let me show you one more thing. Let me dry this. And show you that we can, in going again and going darker, we can create a whole nother layer beyond that of that middle tone horse's mane. You just kind of do little shapes and then you fill it in on the outside. Can you see that? Light, middle, and dark. That's pretty fun. And again, this is another nice little warm-up exercise if you ever just can't get rolling or want to just do something to warm up your brushes and your paint colors. Do little negative shapes. It's good practice. And if you're not familiar with this, and if you haven't done too much of this, just know that it gets easier. And the more you do it, the more you'll just realize you did it. And it'll just kind of come automatically. All of a sudden you'll go, oh my gosh, look what I just did. Little trees in the background, little, whiskers. Oh, let me show you one. I did a cat the other day. And I thought, what a perfect example of negative painting. All this is just negatively painted. So that's where that comes in. Yes, you could use masking fluid, but I am not a fan of masking fluid. I don't use it well. So, but I'm not against it, but I think it's more spontaneous. It's more random when you can just form these little shapes on your own. But anyway, that's negative painting in extreme right there. Okay. Well, I think it might be a good time. Let me see if there's any questions. Let's see. Oh, thank you. Okay. So I think it might be a good time to take a little break. What we're going to do next, that's all I have in my little examples. That's a lot of little tidbits, but hopefully that all makes sense, and hopefully it will resonate as we're painting. We'll go, oh, that's what she meant. So why don't we take maybe a little 6-minute break to get out. This is what we're going to work on next. The first thing I'm going to demonstrate with the cow is the value painting. So if you printed this out from your computer, this is what you'll need next. And if you didn't, don't worry about it. You'll have tonight to work on it. You can do it in the morning or whenever, it doesn't matter. Or you can do it next week if you want to. So, but this is what I'm going to demonstrate next. So go ahead and get this out. And I always like to have music in my workshops, in my live workshops, but because this is being recorded and because of copyright, I can't do music. But Terry has a friend who has, I guess, published some music that's copyright free that letting us use. So he's going to, during our little 6 or 7 or 8 minute breaks, he's going to play the music for us so that we'll have a little music to listen to. So how about, let's see, it's 12:43 my time. Let's meet back at 12:50 with our cow outline on our computer paper. Sound good? Okay. See you at 12:50 or whatever time that is, Eastern time or your time. And I'll mute myself during the break. Okay. I answered a couple questions. There was a question as to, should we draw our cow on our watercolor paper? Yes. If you haven't done that, that would be great. Or do it, whatever, during the break or as we do this or after we do this, whenever you'd like. No hurry. And will I record the Wednesday session? Sure, I can try to record this Wednesday session. Sure, I think I can do that. And like I said, it may be, I don't know, it's optional. So whoever would like to tune in or can, that's great. And if you can't, that's fine too. And to be honest, I've never recorded a Zoom, to be honest. So I think I can do that. I'll try. Worst comes to worst, we'll just, we tune in about 15 minutes early, or you have that opportunity to tune in 15 minutes early on Tuesday too. So if you have any questions and you can't make it on Wednesday, you could use that time as well. No problem. All right. Okay, so I have my cow, my photograph of my cow, and my outline of my cow. And you can see, I love this. There's a glare, shoot. Go a little higher here. I love this photograph. When I took the picture, this cow was standing out in a field, and he was standing right next to this orange barrel. So that beautiful orange is reflecting onto him. I love that. It's almost like he was just trying to do that just to get me to take a picture of him so I could paint him. Perfect. So there's a lot of neat little subtleties in the colors in this. And that, that'll get our imaginations going as to what colors we can use. Okay. But first of all, we do want to do a value painting. And I like to do a value painting because, for a couple of reasons, as opposed to doing a value study, like just with a pencil, a value sketch, if you will. I do those too, but value paintings are nice because they're quick, and human nature is that if something takes you too long, or if it's too labor intensive or cumbersome, you just don't do it. And we know that when we do a value sketch first, before we do a painting, our painting is always going to work out better because we have a roadmap. We've made ourselves a roadmap of where to go with our painting. And we're not just guessing and flying by the seat of our pants when we're painting. So, do we always do that? I hope we do. But are we more likely to talk ourselves out of doing it if it's not very easy to do? I know I would, I know me. So that's why I like value paintings, because they're fast, they're quick, they don't take much time. And then we have a roadmap to go from. Now, a lot of times I'll have my students, like when we're doing landscapes, or when we're doing little cityscapes, I'll have them do their value sketch or value painting. Then I'll have them put their photograph away because we don't need that anymore. We have all the information that we need in our value study. This technique, we do want our value study and we want our photograph, because we are going to be interpreting color from the color that we see on the photograph. So we are constantly going to be looking at the photograph as reference as we're painting, as well as looking at our value study. We're not only seeing value, but we're seeing color. We're seeing if it's a warm or a cool. We're seeing it's a light or dark. We're gathering all that information as we paint. So we're gonna use both of these. Okay. I'm going to mix up my favorite neutral, which happens to be ultramarine blue. Cool. And burnt sienna, warm. Mix those up and it makes a wonderful neutral. And not only does it make a wonderful neutral, but it makes a really nice dark. It can go to almost a black. You can really make almost a black with those two colors, ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Okay, so I have a nice pile of my neutral, and I'm going to, let me see if I can find a clip. I'm going to tape the reference photo a little higher so you can see it better. Okay. All right. I'm looking at my photograph. And the first thing I want to notice is the lightest light. What might I want to leave the light of the paper? The very whitest white of the paper. Okay. Always plan for more white than you think you're going to need. Because if you're like me, you're going to lose it. You're going to forget and paint over it. And that happens. And it's okay. But so I try to make my white areas bigger than I think I'm going to need. And then if I lose some, that's okay. So I think at this point, I see those little white highlights on his nose. Those are pretty beautiful. I'll try to save those. We'll see if that happens or if I forget and paint over them. But I'll intend to save those. And I will intend to save this light right here on the on the right side of his nose, excuse me, as white of the paper. Maybe a little bit up here too. That will be a nice little connected shape of the lightest light. Then everything else is going to have at least a light value, right? So if we know that everything else is going to have at least a light value, then we can just start painting. So and I'm not going to do the tags in his ears. I just prefer not to. So everything else is going to have a light value. Might leave some of this white. This is going to have a value. And every, computer papers are all different. Some are better quality than others, and it might work better than others. And it's not a perfect thing. Don't worry, don't expect it to go on nicely. It's not watercolor paper. We're just doing this for our value study. And it works just fine. I'll go down here. I'm going to leave the white of the paper. I'm going to leave the shape up here. This. Maybe we'll leave some of that light anyway. Maybe not the light of the paper, that side of his nose. Oops, I already went over one of the highlights. I'll leave a little highlight there and a little highlight here. Everything else is at least a light value. All this is at least a light value, of course. All this is at least a light value. All this. And we're seeing, I kind of cut him off right there, and this is his body on this side. So that is going to have at least a light value, all of that. But, it might be a darker value in the foreground, and then it'll get lighter and lighter back here. But at least right now, it's got some value on it. Okay. All right, that's my first layer. I'm going to mix a little more of this. I don't want it to be too watery, especially on this paper. It just gets pretty soggy if you put too much water in. Okay, and this time I'm assessing the light of the white of the paper, the lightest light, and now we're going to smaller shapes of darker value. So this has a little bit darker value at least. This has a little bit darker value at least. All this has a darker value at least. Some I'm going to leave as that second value. Some I'm going to go ahead and paint another layer. So this, some of this up here. All these lines, but I'm not going to worry about those right now. This big shape. We look at big shapes first, then we look at smaller shapes, then we look at smaller shapes, and then we look at smaller shapes. We don't start with the small shapes. We start with the big shapes, don't we? So what was the lightest was the biggest shape, and we're going smaller and smaller, right? Paint around the highlights. Over his whole snout. Leave this little area over here. Maybe a little bit more value here. This ear is quite dark over here. Nice contrast between that dark ear and that part of his eye. Okay, there's our next layer. We're seeing it even come together now, right? It's you can tell what it is just by the values on computer paper. All right, now let's just indicate our super darks. And I am going to go a darker value in my neutral just to ramp it up a notch. Okay, so there would be, a little negative painting opportunity here inside of his ear. There's a beautiful shadow here. His eye. This part of his shoulder. There's a beautiful dark here. His nostril. Under here. It really helps you look at what you have too. It's a nice preamble to your painting because you're kind of studying what you have instead of just jumping right in and starting to paint. And sometimes you don't see things first. That makes sense. This is nice and dark here. And there's the inside of his ear there. Something like that. Okay. actually a little darker here. And then these hairs on his head, there's some subtleties there, the little shadows between the hairs. Negative painting, right? But for the most part, that's about all you need. And if you can take the time to do that, it's really going to help when you go to paint, because it's like a road map. It's like trying to drive without a road map or a navigational device. It kind of guides you to where you're going. Okay. All right. All right, that's good enough for my little value painting. Okay. Now, as I go, last time I demonstrated him, I didn't do any background because I liked this dramatic edge. This time I'm going to show you how I might interject a little background into it, a little color just to tie the background into the subject. I'll show you. We'll do that this time. But I won't worry about doing that on the, well, I'll do that just to remind myself. There's going to be a little bit of value back here. Kind of tie him into his background a little bit. Okay. All right. Can you record? Let's see. Oh, you can record to the iCloud when you set up the meeting. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Terry. And this value study is just on the photocopy paper, right? This is just on computer paper. Would you say the drawing should be accurate and not a rough sketch? The value painting, I mean, it can be a rough sketch. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the drawing. And I won't go into a lot of detail on drawing, but I will say that I do map out where the eyes are, where the nose is. For instance, if I went, let me grab my paper here. Grab just a piece of paper. If I were to go and draw him on my paper, I would map out first where everything's going to be. I would measure, for instance, the eye is a third of the way down. This eye is a third of the way down, and ends up to be about a third of the way down. So I would measure on this paper, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And I would measure exactly where that eye starts. And that's kind of how I start. How far, from the top of the page to the eye might be the same measurement. It just so happens to be eye to eye. Oops, sorry. This measurement is the same as this measurement. Do you do it that way? That's kind of how I draw accurately. So I find one measurement that's the same as another measurement, and then I go from there. So once I place that eye, it would be easy to place the other eye because it's the same measurement from the top of the page to this eye as it is from this eye to this eye. I didn't plan that, it just happened. Okay, so yeah, but in answer to your question, it doesn't have to be methodically exactly drawn out on your value sketch. As long as you know where you're going with your values, then you'll be okay. Okay, I'm going to go around my table for a second and get my watercolor paper. So you can't really see, but I've got an easel back here behind this easel. I have another little easel where I have my reference photo, and then I'm going to put my value study right next to it so I can see that as well, because I'm going to constantly be looking at them. Okay, so I have my cow drawn out on my watercolor paper. Now, if you don't have this done yet, it's okay, no big deal. You'll have plenty of time to work on this. And how are we doing for time? Let's see, okay. What I'll probably do is, well, I don't know, I'll just start. I'm going to do my first layer and probably do a bit of a second layer, or maybe my entire second layer before I stop, at least for a break, and we'll see where we are time-wise. But then we'll have tomorrow to finish him up, and plenty of time for questions and all that stuff. Okay. So to start out, remember when we did our layers, when we did these layers, I chose 2 warms and 2 cools, okay? This time I'm going to choose 3 warms and 3 cools, just because that's how I normally do it. I mean, I think it works better if you kind of keep to a limited palette, and I love color, so I like to do 3 of each. And you can do, it doesn't really matter what colors you use, but keep this in mind. Like someone mentioned, it works better if they're transparent colors. And I loosely think about it like this. There's a light warm value, a middle warm value, and a dark warm value. And there's a light cool value, a middle cool value, and a dark cool value. So whatever color you think of as a light warm, I would consider raw sienna as a nice light warm value. Okay, so that's going to be my first warm, raw sienna. Let's see, alizarin crimson. I love that color. That's going to be my middle value warm. And you can't see this, but I'm just laying them out in different, in little piles on my warm side of my palette. So raw sienna is my light warm. Alizarin crimson is my middle warm. And you can do this or you can do your own. Doesn't matter. And my dark warm is going to be burnt sienna. Okay. Burnt sienna is my dark warm color value. Then I have 3 cool colors. Let's see. Let's do peacock blue is my light cool color value. Ultramarine blue is my middle color value, cool color value. And let's do that. Royal amethyst is my dark, cool color value. You can see my cool side of my palette there. Okay. Now, as I get going, you know, the cools might mix with each other now and then. It's okay. And the warms might mix with each other. That's okay. Now, if the warms and the cools mixed, I'd kind of get muddy. So that's why I love that little divider thing that goes down the middle of my palette. All right. So let's just start. let's just jump right in. And this is just the first layer. Remember how light we start. So guess what? Nothing can go wrong in this layer. Whatever you do is going to work. I'm starting with these siennas, raw sienna and burnt sienna, just because that's what it tells me on a cow. But I'm going to try not to stay particularly true necessarily to what color the cow is. I can see on the photograph that it's a little warmer here, and then it kind of goes cooler next to it on the photograph. So guess what? I'm going to change colors. Cool. Maybe some cool up here. Maybe back into some warm. It doesn't matter. Anything goes. You really can't go wrong in this first layer. You can't make a mistake. It just can't happen. No way. Do you believe me? Okay, just going along here. I have to remember I'm going to leave some white of the paper here. Going to do a little cool in the center of his forehead there. A little more cool there. Maybe back to some warm over his eye. I've got warm, and cool all the way down here. I didn't really mean to do that, so I'm going to change it up. A little more warm here. A little lighter value on this edge here that goes into this light area here. I hope you can see this okay. I hope the glare isn't too bad. Is that okay? Can you see that? Maybe I'll try not to make it quite so light. I love this warm glow into here. Now, remember I said I'd kind of do a little connection to the background here. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a little blue on the side of his face, and I'm going to do a little blue in the background. Keeping my shapes random. I don't want stripy stuff. That's just going to tie him in to something in the background. You'll see. Okay. On we go. I'm just following my value study. It's beautiful warm here. That's going to be gorgeous. Just following the shapes. Whoops. It's okay. Oh, I haven't used the amethyst yet. Goodness. There we go. Random shapes. I'm just kind of pushing it a little bit and just inviting it along. Inviting it along. Oh, and notice the part of the brush that I'm using. Am I using the point? Or am I using this side of it where there's a bigger shape? Because remember, we're starting with big shapes and we're working down to smaller shapes. So what would we need the point the tip of the brush for. We don't need that yet. So I'm keeping my shapes big and random by using the side of my brush. Lost my highlight on the nose. That's okay. I knew I would. It's reading darker to me down here. So I just went to my darker colors. Same value, darker and cooler colors. But even if I didn't choose those colors, it would work. Because guess what? You can always influence with your subsequent layers. You're going to influence whatever color you've laid down first. You can completely influence it the next time you come along. If it's tending to the warm and you wanted it to be cooler, you can cool it the next time. If it's tending to the cool and you wanted it to be warm, you can warm it the next time. Okay. This is the side of his body there. Kind of softens out. Mix a little blue in there as we go down. I know it's looking very light. I think there's a, I don't know, I just can't decide what's the best view. I guess that's as good as we can get. All right, so notice I worked down this shape all the way down this shape first, all the way down this shape first. Instead of hitting here, hitting there, hitting here, hitting there, I'm connecting it all to one big shape so that I don't have a lot of hard edges. Wherever I stop a shape, you're going to have a hard edge, right? So if I were to do a shape here and then pick up and go over here and then pick up, go over here, pick up, go over here, I would have all these hard edges to have to deal with later. So as I did it here, I started at the top, worked all the way back down, all the way down, all the way down. Then I'm going to come over here and work down this side and into this ear. That just made more sense to me because I don't want a lot of hard edges. Make sense? I want to make this light shape interesting. So the way that I enter into that shape from the outside edges is going to make a difference. So this is our first layer. It's a light layer and anything goes. However it turns out, it's going to work. Promise. Let's move a little cool into this ear. Okay. Wherever I've left a little bit of a drop, this paper is very susceptible to those little blooms. And that's fine. I mean, look at that. I love that. It'll do that. And that's okay. But just know that that happens. At the bottom here, you can't see because I have it below here, but I'll show you. At the bottom, you'll get a little collection of your little drops. So sometimes if you don't want that to bloom back up into the paper, it's so sensitive. It's a very sensitive paper because it's so smooth. It blooms right back up. It wicks back up in the paper as it's drying. So you might just take that little drop and wipe it away. Okay, so if you're painting along, I'll give you a few minutes to get to this point. So Terry, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes? 5 minutes?
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. I don't want to rush you, but I think I'm more afraid of boring you, so I'm going to move on. I did read some of the questions. What can I use for peacock blue? It's very close to manganese blue or manganese hue. And if you don't have manganese, it's just maybe teal. It's kind of a greenish blue. And I will try to say what colors I'm using more often. I know that's helpful because it's hard to tell, especially if you can't see my palette. And okay, I think that was it. Any other questions right now? How's it going? I can turn it on to speaker view, or actually it is speaker view. Anyway, I can turn it on. I can turn it on to gallery, and then if you have any questions, or if you want to show yours, or if you have an issue that came up that you want to talk about, anything like that.
Hi, Alicia.
Hi.
Alicia, this is Kathy Hall. Thanks for
Okay.
doing this course for us. I am going to show you mine. I feel like my colors are a lot darker than yours. Like maybe I'm just not using enough water, but I can see that.
Okay. Oh, I see you. Let me see if I can. Let me put you on speaker, and then when you speak, you'll be bigger. Okay, there we go. Oh, nice. Okay.
Thank you.
Fine. No, that's fine.
It's totally new territory for me.
And everyone has a different touch. So you have a different touch than I have with the paint, and it's totally fine. It'll work just the same. In fact, you're going to get there sooner than I will, because I'm working so light, and that's fine. And it's all relative. So if your next layer, if you're seeing a difference between one layer and the next layer, then boom, you've got it. Then it'll work.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks so much.
Sure. Some, everybody has a different touch. So you might just go a little heavier with your pigment. That's perfectly fine. In fact, when I first started teaching this with portraits, I do portraits the same way. And sometimes I'd see a student just fire in, just blast in with the color, and it would scare me a little bit. And I'd think, okay, how are we going to get here? But you know what? It works. If your layers work together, then it's fine. So your layer may not work with my layer, but that's okay, because it's your layer. So it's all good.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you using Winsor Newton burnt sienna?
Let's see. I think that's American Journey.
Okay, thanks.
That's another one that they're way different.
I know.
It's a matter of and I have a lot of different brands in that one too. And I kind of go back and forth. Some of them are more gold, and
Right.
sometimes I'll even sneak a little of another color into a color. For instance, burnt sienna is way brown and it's kind of going flat on me, I'll sneak a little Quin Gold or a little bit of, I have this beautiful color called Quin Sienna. Oh, it's beautiful. And if you mix that in with a little bit of the burnt sienna, it'll make it a little bit brighter and oranger. So I don't know. I kind of play around with my burnt sienna.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Anybody else? Go back on gallery view. Okay. You going okay? Everybody happy? I don't see anybody crying yet. All right, good. All right, let's go to the next layer. Oh, and then somebody asked if how much do I refer to my value piece as I paint? And I do a lot. I have it in my hand or next to my painting as I'm going. So I really refer to it a lot. And what that can do is, of course, help you paint along, because you can kind of follow your map of what you've created for yourself. But also it can teach you if you've gotten everything in your value sketch. And if you have enough information, it'll be easy to paint from. But if you keep having to say, wait, what am I doing? And going back to the photo, and not referring to your value sketch because it's not very helpful, then that might tell you that you need a little more information in your value sketch. It's really helpful to be able to use it and kind of assess how much it's helping you as you go. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next layer. I adjusted my camera just a little bit. Is that any better? I think going out a little bit might help. Is that any better? Anyway, now at least you can see more of this. Okay. And the way that it is, the camera is directly right in my face, but that's okay. I can look around it. All right. And already my palette, my warm colors have just run into one big pile. So I'm going to clean those up and put out fresh paint. Light is raw sienna. Middle is alizarin. And dark is burnt sienna. This is also a good practice of getting the consistency that works best, isn't it? Isn't it all about, isn't watercolor, the secret to watercolor is getting the right consistency? And so the right consistency with this technique is where the paint flows down the paper. It might drip, that's okay. But you know, one color granulates into another. And if that's happening, then you're good. So you can constantly kind of assess if that's working for you too. And if you need to adjust your pigment amount or your water amount. All right. All right. So this is all just my first layer. And I'm taking a little more time to think about it this time. I'm looking at where my second layer is. So how I can keep separate my first white of the paper layer, my second all over light value layer, and this is my third layer. And I want to be able to see a difference from one layer to the next. Paying a little more attention this time to the color, the value that I'm going for. It makes a little more difference than the first time around, but still pretty much you can't go wrong. I'm just going to keep saying that so you won't be nervous. My eyes are following along in my value study of exactly where I need to go. Can you see that? Oh, that luminous stuff that's happening, and it's just the color is granulating together. I love that. That's what it's all about. So exciting. How could you ever have a bad day when you're painting with watercolors? All right. I like this value, but I think I'm going to go a little darker. At least some of this ear. I don't have to go over the whole thing again. Oh, I was going to call out the color. I'll try to call out the colors that I'm using, sorry. Here's a little of that peacock blue going into this shape here. I'm going back and forth. My eyes are going back and forth from my value painting to the actual photograph. I'm still referencing that photograph pretty much. That was alizarin. Just kind of having fun with these beautiful shapes, beautiful organic shapes. That was raw sienna. Before this dries too much and creates a big edge, I'm going to finish this shape off with alizarin. We'll come back into this shape later with a negative shape where the inside of his ear would be. Let's just finish off this shape with this alizarin here. All right. I see cool here. So this is ultramarine. And what I see and what you see are might be two different things. That's okay. It's your interpretation. You're the boss. I'm just the cheerleader. There's a beautiful warm area right here that I'm interpreting as alizarin. Raw sienna. Let's go back up here and go cool. Let's do the peacock into this shape. I keep forgetting to use my royal amethyst. Here's some royal amethyst because it gets darker here anyway, doesn't it? And guess what? I'm putting royal amethyst over raw sienna. That's kind of a recipe for neutral, isn't it? But it's pushing more to the cool, so it's okay. Okay. I see something happening here that I want to break up. It's these vertical shapes, vertical, vertical, vertical. So I'm going to do a horizontal thing here just to break that up. Ultramarine. Oops. This is where that beautiful warm starts, the reflection from that barrel. I just actually mixed inadvertently, but that's okay. I mixed alizarin and the raw sienna just to make it really glowy. Okay. I see a little cool on that edge. So I'm going to go back into a little bit of ultramarine. See, even with 2 layers, it's starting to take shape, isn't it? Here's this little shape.
Yeah, you should have just gone.
Raw sienna. Amethyst. I did lose my little highlights. I knew I would. Oh, well. I've still got this one. There we go. We could always lift it off at the end, right? Where there's a will, there's a way. Amethyst. This is really dark in here, so I'm going to interpret that right now as, oh, I don't know, a little peacock. And some ultramarine. Now these are, I know these are edges and they're drying. I need to get back to them soon. So I will do that now. See, they were still fresh enough that I just moved them down. They didn't create an edge. And that's because I'm working on a slant, you know. If I were working flat, they would be well dry by now. I should have changed my water at our break. I forgot. But I use a divided food container for my water. That way I've got 3 things of water, 3 little containers of water in one, so I don't have to change it as often. Okay. Beautiful, warm here. Beautiful, cool here. Now see where I did that outside edge? I didn't go back over that again. I'm just going to leave that light. And by the time, this is such a dark edge, by the time we're finished, you'll hardly even notice it. It'll just be a background thing. See that? Okay. Burnt sienna, alizarin, raw sienna. It's so glowy. It's beautiful down here. And that nice edge, that nice contrasty edge there, oh, that's just going to glow. I'm looking more at the photograph now because I don't have as much information in my sketch. This neat little shape down there. Okay, so I've gone down, 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 down. I'll start back up here and then finish off on this side. Burnt sienna. I don't want to get too much detail, but there's some neat shapes here. Ultramarine. It's quite a dark edge here. alizarin, just because I don't want to go very long with one color on my brush. Into this shade. Let's see, burnt sienna. I've got cool underneath, so I've got a nice, I'm getting a nice little neutral here. Come up here and form this edge here. And then this side of him, this is pretty much as far as I'm going to go in this part of him. A little more warm value here. Break it up with a little alizarin. Peacock. Okay, don't have much information here, but I'm seeing more on the photograph now that I don't have here. So I'm going to go back in at this point and put a little more, whoops, a little more value to work with here. This shape kind of leads into this little thing here on his forehead. I don't want to get too nitpicky with shapes. Just a little color. Okay, that's layer number 2. Should I give you 5 minutes to work on that? By the way, the music that Terry is playing, isn't that beautiful? And Terry, I don't have the piece of paper that I wrote it down on, the name of the group. Could you tell us that so we could look it up?
I will put it in the chat. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Hello, Terry.
There we go. Excellent. Thank you.
All righty. I've got you on gallery view again. How's it going? Good. Did you see a nice separation from one layer to the next layer? Are you happy?
Yeah, I
with
did.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Alyssa has her kitty picture that cracks me up. Got two little kitties. Okay. So anybody want to show or you have any comments, questions, issues? Okay, let's see.
Alicia,
Rebecca.
I'm finding some hard edges are forming, but and I'm not sure whether how to take care of those. But
Okay, and tell me who's speaking right now.
I'm sorry, it's Kathy Hall.
Okay, let me put it on speaker view. Then when you speak, you'll come up.
Okay.
So Kathy, so you're finding hard edges.
Yeah, here and there. And my tendency to want to go to detail is really raising its ugly head.
Oh, I understand. I understand.
Thank you.
You know, so I mean, the attention to detail, that's okay. That's, you know, that might be just you. But, you know, thinking about painting big shapes first and then going to the smaller shapes, that helps.
Yeah.
And, you know, just practicing simplifying and using a bigger brush, that helps.
Mhm.
Standing when you paint, I think you're standing, that helps.
I am, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and some of that just might be your personality. So, you know, don't fight it.
Thank you, you're kind.
You know, some things are just part of us, but yeah, it's good to, there are things you can practice to loosen up and to paint bigger shapes and to try not to pay attention to the detail, at least not until the end. You can get as detailed as you want on these, but if, you know, we paint the big shapes first, and then at the very end, right before we sign it and right before we sell it is when we put the detail.
Wishful thinking. Thank you.
So, yep, it's all good. Yeah, and so if you're getting hard edges, are you separating your shapes as you go down too much, maybe? Or
It's not throughout the whole work, but they're just spot where
I have them too. And you know, next time you go down the page, maybe break at a color in a different place, so it's not always at that same place. If you have a shape or a line or something that's objectionable, or maybe a color that didn't work very well, be careful not to change it right on top of that same place the next time and draw more attention to it. You know, move through it and change somewhere else, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Lynn? Yeah. Oh, you're on mute though. Could you unmute yourself?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I totally lost my cow. I had a terrible picture of it and I tried to do what I could, but I feel completely.
Okay, I can see it. Are you losing the lines? Okay. And
I think I have I don't know what I got, good pig maybe.
well, you might at some point stop and draw back in the lines while you can still see them. And I forgot to mention, you know, that's a good point. That brings up a good point, is that when you draw it in the beginning, make sure you're drawing it dark enough that you can see through a couple of 2 or 3 different layers of paint, because you might lose your design if you don't draw it light, it's dark enough. But you could at this point, you know, while you can still barely see it, or just draw it back.
That's really all I could do to save it. Just get those lines in. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah. I keep seeing me.
Hey, Alicia, it's Mark Powers. Can you see this?
For some reason, I'm up, so I'm going to be quiet. And you talk, and maybe you'll come up.
You can see it. There it is. Kind of splotchy. That's
No,
kind of cool.
no, it looks, it's working really well. It's working really well. I do see some shapes, and I think they work. I think they're in good places. And you've got, 2 or 3 more layers to go, remember? So I think you're still in great shape. And like I just mentioned, you too might, when you go through the next time, break in different places. So where you see a line, where you see a shape that's overwhelming right now, you'll quiet that shape by going through it and breaking in another place. Does that make sense?
It does. My dogs are barking. They're hungry, so I had to mute myself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it's working great. I think you're still in good shape.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. All right. Oh gosh, it's almost 10 after 2. Oh,
Can I just ask you, Elisa?
mhm.
I think you were kind of answered it, but where you're getting some of the like harder lines than what you want. In this next layer, then you want to work on, or do you want some of those hard edges in there?
You might want some of those hard edges. That might be where the edge is. So, be mindful of that. You did some of those for a reason. I can see that.
Yeah.
Where there might be let's say a shape that, I don't even see anything that's not working. It's all working really well.
Well, here maybe is a little bit too much.
That's okay. That's okay. Got a lot of layers to go. At least 2 more layers to go.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're seeing something that's objectionable or that's drawing your eye that shouldn't be drawing your eye, just move through it in another direction. We tend to, human nature calls us to, we see something we don't like, so we go over it again, the same direction, and it gets even more pronounced.
Okay.
So if you have a shape that's, let's say, a vertical shape that's really distracting because it's so vertical. Oh, I'm showing you and you can't see. Let me just show you with my. So if you have a shape, let's say this shape here, let's say that's just objectionable. that's just bugging me, let's say. And I just don't want to see that next time. I want that to be quiet. So I might go this way next time. I might, take it in another direction. I might, if I didn't like that color, which I do like that color, I'm not going to change it. But let's say I don't want it that warm. So next time I take a different shape, a different direction, a different color, different, a different temperature. It's okay. It's really,
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's just fun to see what happens because it feels sort of random, doesn't it? And there is a lot of randomness to it, but there's a rhyme and a reason, believe me. And it'll make more sense each time you go. And hopefully it's making sense. You are working mindfully, but it seems random for a while. And I love this technique because it makes it seem, your viewer is going to look and go, how the heck did they decide to put blue there? The random colors will all come together, and this will be a beautiful, beautiful underpainting of what your colors will really be. And as we go, I said you could get more detailed as you go if you want to. You could even get more. You could even get closer to the local color if you wanted to. I like to stick with each pure color as you go, and I like to stick with layering one over another in order to neutralize that. But if you wanted to get closer to the local color and get closer to the browns and stuff like that, you could. But this is always going to be a beautiful, beautiful underpainting of surprise color. I don't know where I was going with that or where that came from. I was kind of, anyway, I forget where I was going with that. But does that answer anyone's question? Anyway, it feels random, but it's a neat process, but because it's really not as random as it seems. And we're just really utilizing the best part of watercolor, which is just the way it mixes and the way it just glows one color next to another color. All right. So it's 10 after 2 already, or whatever time it is there, but we only have 20 minutes left. So I'm going to get one more layer in. And let me just say that I will tune in, you'll be able to tune in 15 minutes early tomorrow morning. So feel free if you have any questions, I'm all ears, I'll be ready for you. And, I'm happy to answer questions all throughout. Oh, there's another question. Let's see. Oh, Terry put the whitebirdadventures.com on there. That's the music. Thank you, Terry. And I didn't have.
You're welcome.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I forgot to say, if you are using cold press, okay, Carly, you're using cold press. You're just observing. Okay, here's the difference. It'll work just fine. Cold press is fine, but since it doesn't dry the way that hot press does, you'll have to stop in between each layer and dry it completely. That's all. Okay, and it'll work just the same way. Okay, good. I'm glad you asked that because I forgot to mention that. All right, is anybody else using cold press? Okay.
I am. Danielle
I'm sorry?
is also using cold press.
Oh, you are? Okay. How's it going, Danielle? Are you painting along?
I am. Let me try to show you, please.
And are you drying?
It got very dark, very early, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Oh, wow. Nice. It's beautiful. It's working out great. Yeah. And so you're drying in between your layers?
I did just after the medium layer, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Good. Yeah. Because cold press holds on to the color in a whole different way, like a sponge. You really have to get it all the way dry.
Okay.
That's the biggest difference. Okay. All right. Good. Thanks. All right. Okay. And I may not even get through one layer. I don't want to keep you any longer, but I will paint along for another 10, 12 minutes or so, and then we'll call it a day. All right. Again, I'm really taking my time a little bit more and more each layer because I want to be more mindful each time now of exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Go figure, right? Freshening up my paint a little bit. All right. Again, up here, there's these little shapes of the shadows of the hair, of the globs of hair. So right now for this layer, I think I'll treat those as smaller shapes. I'm not going to go to the line work yet. I'm still using my big brush, but I'm going more to my point in my brush. I could go to a smaller brush because I'm going to smaller shapes now. but I'd prefer to keep my big brush because I don't want to start piddling around with really small shapes yet. I'm treating the whole top of his head now as kind of one layer instead of going down one side and then down the other. I'm into these smaller shapes.
You're using burnt sienna there?
Burnt sienna, yep. Sorry, I forgot to mention. Okay, that was a little alizarin on that edge there. The peacock, kind of pull that together. Violet. Because this shape is so nice and dark. There's a neat shadow here. Now I'm wanting hard edges, aren't I? More so. And remember that little exercise that we did of softening edges? Well, we've softened from the dark to the mid to the light to the white of the paper. So we've got a really soft edge there. So I'm feeling freer to paint a hard edge because there's not a big jump in value. Does that make sense? Okay, into
Yes.
more warm here. And this is alizarin. There's a little light area on the top of his eye that I'm leaving. I think I'll go into his eye with some amethyst into the eyeball. An eyeball, even one in a shadow like this, is never all the same color. That's no fun. So imagine where some of it might be cool and some of it might be warm. You're always going to have a little warm in an eyeball because there's a reflection, right? So I've mixed some alizarin in there, some amethyst, and some blue, ultramarine blue. Just gives it a little life. Oops. Just kind of had a little chunk in my paint. I got it out. This is a beautiful dark shape here. And again, I'm not going to do the whole thing the same color. That's just not who I am. I see this part of it as warm, different. So this is burnt sienna, dark, but warm. And I see this as cooler, amethyst, a little bit of ultramarine there. Okay. The glow of ultramarine next to the burnt sienna is just amazing. Again, it's those complementary colors, those opposites. It's just a beautiful contrast. Let's keep this pretty warm. Alizarin. Keep this pretty cool. Amethyst. Alizarin. Ultramarine. Here's another one of those places that I'm wanting an edge there. Look at that. Got to have a little drama somewhere. Like we don't have drama, right? This is all about drama. Keep that very cool. Oops. Alizarin. I'm having to look here, but I'm referring back onto my picture because there's not a lot of information there. This is all pretty cool. Burnt sienna. Alizarin. There's that glow. Let's go into a little bit of this raw sienna. And before that dries too much, we'll connect that to more cool. How about let's put some warm in here. This is burnt sienna. Just to kind of bring this warm over into this shape. However, it's going to be cooler because there's cool underneath. It's really quite neutral. That's going to be a nice contrast, neutral to pure color to this nice warm glow color here, right? Okay, and I know we're almost out of time. I think I'll just about make it. Don't ever hurry. working into this shape to create this beautiful little edge here now. Let's drop some warm in there. Alizarin. Again, I'll go back later to establish that little negative inside of his ear shape. This is ultramarine and a little bit of the amethyst. And I think I'm going to stop there. I've got this part to do, but we'll pick up there tomorrow. So can you see that's another layer, and you're starting to see some separation and some areas where I purposely made edges. So those edges come in handy. You know, they'll start to make sense because, you know, we want to go into those little areas of detail at some point, you know? All right. Okay, well, if there are any other last minute questions, feel free. And otherwise, like I said, feel free to tune in, you know, 15 minutes early in the morning or in the afternoon, whatever it is in your part of the world. And I'll be there to answer questions as well. So I've had so much fun so far. I hope you did too. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow and continue with this. Oh yeah, if you have to miss tomorrow, no problem. I'm sorry about that, but you'll get the recording. And yeah, Terry will have the recording out by tonight. I think, right, Terry?
Yeah, by 6 probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Takes about a half an hour to upload.
So yeah, you'll have that in the evening. So happy painting. And if you paint tonight, have fun and we'll meet here.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Could you go over the colors that you used?
sure.
Thank you.
The three warms are raw sienna,
Uh-huh,
alizarin crimson,
right,
and burnt sienna.
right.
In that order from light to dark. And then the three cools were peacock blue,
Peacock blue.
ultramarine blue,
Okay.
and royal amethyst.
Royal amethyst. That's okay. Great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure. That's an American Journey color. It's awesome.
Oh, okay. I don't have that one. What else could I use besides that? A violet, maybe?
Dioxin to violet is almost identical.
Okay.
Or, you know, if you have mineral violet, or there are tons of
Oh, I
violet,
think I've got that one. Yeah.
something that
Okay.
goes real dark. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. And whatever violet, you know, your violet may not be as dark as this one. So maybe
Sure.
it's your cool tone, you know, so whatever it looks to you, that's what you can do.
Okay. And the two colors that you did, the light and dark value one?
Oh,
So
just
you mix it, that was just raw
ultramarine,
sienna,
burnt sienna.
burnt sienna and ultramarine. Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Thanks.
Sure.
Enjoyed it, really. Look forward to
Good.
seeing you tomorrow.
Yay. Okay. Well, have a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Alicia.
Bye-bye.